Painted Skin. It is said that Wang Sheng from Taiyuan got up early in the morning and met a woman running alone on the road with a bundle in her arms, showing that she was struggling. Wang Sheng hurriedly caught up and saw that she was a beautiful woman in her teenage years. Wang Sheng admired her very much and asked, "Why are you walking alone before dawn?" The woman said, "You are a walking person, and you can't relieve other people's depression. Why do you ask me?" Wang Sheng said, "What worries are there? If I can serve, I will never refuse." The woman said sadly, "My parents were greedy for money, so they sold me to a wealthy family to be their concubine. The eldest wife of that family was very jealous of me. She scolded me every morning and scolded me every night. The torture was so severe that I couldn't stand it anymore and wanted to run away far away." Wang Sheng asked, "Where are you going?" The woman said, "There is no definite place for people who are on the run." Wang Sheng said, "My home is not far from here, so I feel sorry for you to come to my home." The woman was very happy and agreed. Wang Sheng carried her burden and led her home together. The woman entered the door and saw no one in the room, so she asked, "Why doesn't Mr. Wang have a family?" Wang Sheng replied, "This is my study." The woman said, "This place is very nice. If you pity me and want to save me, you must keep it a secret and don't let others know." Wang Sheng agreed, and the two slept together. The woman hid in the study, and no one knew about it for many days. Wang Sheng revealed this matter to his wife Chen. His wife suspected that the woman was a dowry girl from a wealthy family, and persuaded Wang Sheng to send her away, but Wang Sheng refused to listen. One day, Wang Sheng accidentally went to the market and met a Taoist priest. When the Taoist priest saw Wang Sheng, he looked shocked and asked, "What did you encounter?" Wang Sheng replied, "Nothing happened to you." The Taoist priest said, "You are surrounded by evil spirits. How can you say that you don't have any evil spirits?" Wang Sheng tried his best to defend himself, and the Taoist priest had to leave, saying, "How stupid. There are people in the world who don't wake up even when they are about to die." Wang Sheng was surprised when he heard what the Taoist said and couldn't help but doubt the woman. "Then I thought about it, she was obviously a beautiful girl. How could she be a monster? It must be a Taoist priest who wants to defraud people of food under the guise of suppressing evil and eliminating disasters." After a while, he came to the door of the study and found that the door was closed from the inside, making it impossible to get in. Wang Sheng felt doubtful, so he jumped into the yard through the gap in the wall. Seeing that the door was also tightly closed, he quietly approached the window and went into the house. Looking inside, I saw a ferocious evil ghost, with a green complexion and jagged fangs. He was holding a colored pen and was painting on a piece of human skin spread out on the bed. After finishing the painting, the evil ghost threw away the colored pen, lifted up the human skin, shook it like clothes, put it on his body, and immediately turned into a woman. When Wang Sheng saw this, he was so frightened that he crawled out quietly like a dog and hurried to catch up with the Taoist priest, but he didn't know where he was. Wang Sheng searched everywhere and finally met a Taoist priest in the wild. Wang Sheng knelt straight on the ground and begged the Taoist priest for help. The Taoist priest said, "Let me drive it away for you." This thing also took a lot of painstaking efforts to find a substitute, and I can't bear to harm its life. After saying that, he handed a whisk to Wang Sheng and asked him to hang it on the bedroom door. When parting, the Taoist priest asked him to meet at Qingdi Temple the next day. When Wang Sheng returned home, he didn't dare to enter the study, so he slept in his wife's room and hung the fly whisk on the door. At the first watch, Wang Sheng heard something moving outside the door. He didn't dare to look at it, so he asked his wife to take a look through the crack in the door. "I saw a woman walking over." When the woman saw the fly whisk on the door, she didn't dare to come in. She stood outside the door and gritted her teeth in anger. After a long time, she left. After a while, the woman came back again, cursing and saying, "The Taoist priest is scaring me. You can't spit out what you eat in your mouth." After saying that, she took off the fly whisk, smashed it into pieces, broke the door, and came inside. Climbed directly onto Wang Sheng's bed, tore open Wang Sheng's belly, took out his heart, and carried it away. Wang Sheng's wife cried loudly, and the maid heard the sound and came in. When she shined a light, she found that Wang Sheng was dead and blood was everywhere. Mrs. Chen was too frightened to cry, so she just shed tears. The next day, Mrs. Chen asked her younger brother Erlang to run to tell the Taoist priest. The Taoist priest said angrily, "I pity her, but how dare you do this?" She followed Erlang to her home, but the woman had disappeared. The Taoist priest raised his head, looked around, and said, "Fortunately, I didn't run far away." He asked, "Whose family is in the south courtyard?" Erlang said, "It's my residence." The Taoist priest said, "That ghost is now in your house." Erlang was surprised and thought he was not at his home. The Taoist priest asked him, "Has an unknown person come to your house?" Erlang replied, "I went to Qingdi Temple early in the morning, and I really don't know. Wait until I get home and ask." After leaving for a short time, he came back and said, "Sure enough, this happened. An old woman came here in the morning. She wanted to be a servant in our family and take care of the housework. My wife kept her, and she is still at home." The Taoist priest said, "This is it." So I went to the south courtyard with Erlang. After entering the courtyard, the Taoist priest held a wooden sword in his hand, stood in the middle of the courtyard, and shouted, "You evildoer! Give me my fly whisk." The old woman in the house was frightened and panicked, her face was pale, and she ran out to think about it. Escape! The Taoist priest chased after her and slashed her with his sword. The old woman fell to the ground, and her human skin fell off with a crash. She turned into an evil ghost, lying there and snarling like a pig. The Taoist priest chopped off the evil ghost's head with a wooden sword. The ghost's body turned into a thick smoke and swirled into a pile on the ground. The Taoist priest took out a gourd, pulled out the stopper, and put it in the smoke. He heard a whooshing sound like inhalation, and in the blink of an eye, all the thick smoke was sucked into the gourd. The Taoist priest sealed the mouth of the gourd tightly and put it in his pocket. Everyone looks at that human skin, including features, eyes, hands, and feet. The Taoist priest rolled up the human skin, making a sound like a scroll, put it in his pocket, and said goodbye. Mrs. Chen came to the door and knelt down, crying and begging the Taoist priest to save Wang Sheng. The Taoist priest refused and was unable to do anything. Chen became even more sad and lay on the ground, unable to get up. The Taoist priest pondered for a while and said, "My magic is shallow, and I really can't bring the dead back to life. I will point you to someone who may be able to save your husband. If you ask him, he will definitely be able to find a solution." Chen asked, "Who is he?" The Taoist priest said, "There is a madman in the market who often lies in the dung pile. Go and beg him to try. If he insults you, don't be angry." Erlang also heard about this madman, so he said goodbye to the Taoist priest and went with Chen. When I arrived at the market, I saw a crazy beggar singing songs upside down on the road, dragging a 3-foot-long snot from his nose. He was so dirty that no one dared to approach him. Mrs. Chen crawled up to him on her knees. The madman smiled and said, "Does the beauty like me?" Miss Chen told the reason, and the madman laughed and said, "Everyone can be a husband, so why do we have to save him?" Chen said, Chen begged, and the madman shouted, "How strange. A man is dead. Please ask me to save him. Am I the Lord of Hell?" Angrily, he hit Chen with a wooden stick. Mrs. Chen endured the beating, and people in the market gradually gathered around them like a wall. The madman coughed up phlegm, spit out a handful, raised it to Chen's mouth, and said, "Eat it." Chen's face turned red, and she looked embarrassed. Then I thought of the Taoist priest's instructions and had no choice but to bite the bullet and eat. When I swallowed it, it felt like a ball of cotton wool. I swallowed it gurglingly and finally got stuck in my chest. The madman laughed loudly and said, "The beauty likes me." Then he stood up and left without looking back. Mrs. Chen followed behind and saw him walking into the temple. Mrs. Chen went in and took a look, but she didn't know where she had gone. She searched carefully, but there was no trace of it. Mrs. Chen went back, feeling resentful and ashamed. After returning home, Miss Chen was heartbroken that her husband had died tragically, and she also regretted the humiliation of swallowing phlegm. She cried so hard that she leaned back and forth, begging for death. She wanted to wash away the blood of her husband and put his body into a coffin. The family members stood and watched from a distance, and no one dared to get close. Mrs. Chen held her husband's body and cleaned up the intestines. She cried while cleaning her body, crying until she was hoarse. Suddenly, I wanted to vomit, and I felt that the blockage in my chest rushed out violently, and before I could turn around, it had already fallen into my husband's abdomen. Chen was surprised to see that it turned out to be a human heart, beating suddenly in the abdomen, and the steam was steaming like smoke. Mrs. Chen was greatly surprised, and hurriedly closed her husband's abdominal cavity with both hands, and squeezed with all her strength. When she relaxed a little, hot air came out of the gap. So she tore a piece of silk and tied it up. She stroked the body with her hands and felt that it gradually became warmer. He covered himself with the quilt again. In the middle of the night, he opened the quilt and took a look. There was breath in his nose. After daybreak, Wang Sheng was alive. He said, "It was like a dream, and I only felt a slight pain in my stomach." Looking at the original wound, there was a scab as big as a copper coin, and it was all healed soon.
Alright, this story has come to an end. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.